The Heir Raised in Shadows. A story of truth, love, and the price of becoming good. My name is Leon Ashford, and for most of my life, I believed I had been born into hardship. A cramped home, cheap clothes, strict routines, carefully counted coins, and a grandmother who taught me discipline with the precision of a general and the warmth of a stone. My older brother, Damien, was the prince of our family, pampered, overindulged, raised in a mansion with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. I was told he earned his comforts. I was told I had to earn mine, and I believed it, because I had no reason not to. I didn't know then that my entire life had been engineered with the cold logic of a billionaire father determined to build the perfect heir. Everything was scripted. Everyone was part of a role, and I was the only one who didn't know. When I stepped outside as a child, thinking I was entering the messy, unpredictable world, I was walking into a meticulously choreographed stage. The smiling street sweeper, who complimented my school uniform, an actor. The tired office worker eating breakfast on a bench, who shared lessons of life, an actor. Even the quiet boy who sat by the river, skipping stones and speaking to me about patience, an actor hired to teach me emotional restraint. And when my teacher in school said that my foreign language skills were weak, my grandmother, really a behavioral psychologist named Dr. Laura Miles, ranged for an English tutor disguised as a lost tourist, who, accidentally, asked me for directions and then ran through entire dialogue scenes from the textbook, as if fate had simply thrown him my way. Nothing was fate. Everything was planned. After school, when I returned to the apartment building I thought was mine, I passed by neighbors, who always seemed to have the perfect advice, the perfect problems, the perfect timing to teach me something. I would later learn they were experts, linguists, mathematicians, sociologists, people with doctorates, who pretended to argue over grocery prices so I could learn financial responsibility without realizing it. And as intended, I grew into a child who did not waste food, who folded the same pair of pants carefully every night, who saved every coin like it was the last one he would ever see. My report cards glowed. My discipline was flawless. My obedience was absolute. But the price of raising me this way weighed heavily on the only people who truly loved me. My real grandparents, Elena and August Reed, were forbidden from seeing me except through the lens of a camera, the same camera my father used to judge whether I was becoming the right kind of son. For years they begged to visit, and finally, on my 10th birthday, they were allowed to come, but they had to wear old clothes and pass through a humiliating authenticity check, pretending to be poor enough to fit the narrative. Right before entering, they ran into Dr. Miles on the stairwell. Eleanor Reed, my real grandmother, lost her composure for the first time in her life, and snapped, calling Laura a fraud, a thief of identity. When they entered the small apartment, my mother inspected them and confiscated the money hidden in Grandma's socks, claiming it was dangerous to give a child such temptation. My grandparents tried to play along, but their eyes were filled with heartbreak. When Elena saw how thin I had become, strict rationing was part of the program. She trembled, unable to keep quiet. She whispered something about how I should be living in the sunshine of the real Ashford estate, not here in this artificial darkness. In an instant, my father smothered a slice, and then life went on as it always had, until the day it didn't. I was 17 when the illusion began to fracture. One evening, walking home from the manufactured neighborhood, where every face was familiar because they were paid to be, I passed by a small basketball court. Under the streetlights, I saw someone shooting hoops with graceful confidence, dribbling, pivoting, spinning, laughing breathlessly like a teenager. The moment she turned, I froze. It was my real grandmother, Elena, the woman I had been told was weak, tired, ill. She stared at me as though caught stealing the world. I took a step forward. She took a step back, then sighed, lowering the ball. Leon, she whispered, you weren't supposed to see this. That night, she and my grandfather told me everything. Every actor, every manipulation, every lie, every staged crisis, every test, every camera, every stolen moment of real love. I sat on their worn couch in their tiny, rented apartment, my hands gripping a chipped mug of tea, listening to the story of my own life, as if it belonged to someone else. A life built not for living but for shaping. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something deeper happened, silent, sharp, irreversible, a quiet breaking. But in that breaking, I finally understood who loved me for real. From that night on, I grew up differently, not the way they trained me, but the way I chose. I remained disciplined, patient, economical, but no longer because of fear, because of conviction. I worked to understand business, not to inherit an empire, but to prepare myself to confront the man who built my childhood like a prison disguised as a lesson. My brother Damien spiraled through adulthood, addiction, debt, reckless decisions. He barged into my room one night, desperate, devastated, accusing me of being father's new favorite. "You're the masterpiece," he spat. "I'm the failure he regrets." I saw in him the other victim of the same man. We were polar opposites, but both shaped in ways that broke us. The final confrontation came 2 years later at the Ashford Foundation Gala. My father stood on stage in a spotless suit, speaking proudly about the son he had raised through discipline, praising me as the future of the empire. Cameras flashed, applause rolled like thunder, and then, at the back of the hall, my grandmother Elena walked in, wearing the same old clothes they forced her to wear years ago. With the same fierce dignity they tried to steal. With no invitation, with no fear, she walked straight toward the stage, her steps echoing through the marble hall, and took the microphone out of my father's hand. "He doesn't need an empire," she said. "He needs the life you stole from him." Gasps, silence, stunned faces. My father lunged forward, furious, but I stepped between them. "Enough," I said. My voice shook the hall more than hers had. "If I'm old enough to take over your legacy, I'm old enough to confront it." And I told the truth. All of it. The actors, the poverty simulation, the lies, the manipulation, the stolen childhood, the cruelty disguised as education, and the love I had been denied. The world exploded. The media tore into my father. Psychologists argued for weeks. Ethics professors wrote papers about the Ashford experiment. Damien, surprisingly, stepped forward to defend me publicly, the first act of courage he'd shown in years. And me. I did not take the empire. Not yet. Instead, I used what they had taught me: discipline, budgeting, strategic thinking, and built something of my own, the New Dawn Initiative, a foundation dedicated to helping children raised in unstable or harmful environments. Real children, with real struggles. Not experiments, not projects, not heirs, just human beings who needed truth and love. I hired my grandparents to help run it. I hired Damien to mentor struggling teens, which saved his life as much as theirs. And eventually, even my father came, humbled, quieter, broken open in a way I never expected. He apologized, not perfectly, not easily, but enough. The story of my life was built in shadows, but I live in the light now. My name is Leon Ashford. I was raised inside a lie, shaped by control, molded by fear, but I grew into a man who chooses truth, generosity, and compassion, because the greatest lesson I learned was not the one they intended. You cannot build a good man by manipulating him, but you can forge one when he chooses kindness, even after surviving the opposite. And that choice was mine.